You think heartbreak is personal, but it is quietly manufactured around you. You blame your feelings, while a hidden system designs how deeply you attach. If loyalty feels outdated today, remember someone benefits when your trust keeps breaking. Heartbreak feels normal today because constant emotional instability is presented as modern connection. You are told that everything is temporary, but your nervous system still wants safety. Your mind is wired for stable bonds, but your environment rewards unstable attention. This conflict creates a silent pressure where you accept pain as standard experience. You start believing that deep loyalty is unrealistic and quick replacements are practical. When something repeats often enough, the brain treats it as usual background. Heartbreak becomes noise, and the real danger stays hidden behind that noise. Machiavelli once said, if you want obedience, confuse hearts with fear. In emotional terms, confusion is created when people keep shifting between warmth and distance. They never fully commit, yet they never fully leave, so your mind keeps chasing. Your brain cannot relax because it waits for clarity that never arrives. This is not random, it is a working tactic of psychological influence. The more uncertain you feel, the more value you give to small kindness. A single message feels like a rescue, even after weeks of emotional neglect. You start rewarding inconsistency with gratitude, and your standards quietly fall without warning. Heartbreak feels normal because emotional loyalty is treated like an old-fashioned weakness. You are praised when you move on quickly, not when you heal intentionally. You are encouraged to stay available, even when your energy is fully exhausted. You are told that caring deeply makes you dramatic or clingy or irrational. So you learn to doubt your own need for stable emotional presence. This self-doubt is the first cut that drains your inner protection. Once you question your right to loyalty, manipulators can reshape your expectations easily. Notice how emotionally draining people use mixed signals as a daily language. They appear warm when they need validation, attention, or personal comfort from you. When you need support, they go silent, distant, or strangely irritated without reason. They turn your emotional needs into a problem, but treat their own needs as priority. You are slowly trained to believe that your feelings take too much space. This training is not spoken, it is delivered through repeated reactions over time. You start editing yourself before speaking, just to avoid their subtle rejection. Your heart begins shrinking to fit inside their comfort zone, and you call it compromise. Albert Bandura once said if people repeat actions, they are being reinforced somehow. Here, the reinforcement is not joy, it is relief from anxiety they created. The manipulator pulls away, your mind panics, then they return with small affection. Your nervous system floods with relief, and that relief feels like love. You are not bonding with the person, you are bonding with the relief. This cycle conditions you to tolerate disrespect, just to feel temporary emotional calm. Heartbreak then appears as a natural price for experiencing rare moments of relief. You accept short emotional highs, even when they come with deep, exhausting lows. Another reason heartbreak feels normal is the way comparison attacks your self-worth. You constantly see people replaced, upgraded, or discarded in the name of freedom. Your brain receives a repeated message: everyone is replaceable, so do not expect loyalty. This belief makes you enter connections with silent fear and secret insecurity. When conflict appears, you assume you will be replaced if you assert boundaries. So you stay quiet, you give more, and you slowly lose yourself. Emotional loyalty becomes a risk, while detachment appears like intelligent self-protection. But this so-called detachment often hides unprocessed pain and quiet emotional numbness. Emotionally draining people sense this fear of replacement more clearly than you realize. They use it as leverage, reminding you how many options they supposedly have. They talk about many connections, but invest deeply in almost none of them. They create an atmosphere where you feel lucky, they even give you attention. Once you feel lucky, you stop questioning whether their behavior is truly respectful. You accept cancellations, last-minute changes, and delayed responses as modern lifestyle. Each ignored message cuts a little part of your self-respect away. You call it busy schedule, but your body calls it continuous rejection. The most dangerous shift happens inside your definition of normal emotional effort. You start thinking that loyalty means tolerating repeated emotional injuries without response. You confuse stability with patience, and patience with suffering in silent endurance. The more you endure, the more you believe you are being loyal. Yet true loyalty requires mutual care, not one-sided emotional sacrifice every day. When care is missing, what you call heartbreak is actually psychological wear and tear. You are not breaking from love, you are breaking from long-term self-abandonment. Now the real question begins silently inside you. If heartbreak feels normal because loyalty lost value around you, then who secretly gains power from your decision to accept this as unchangeable? You think heartbreak hurts because someone left, but the real damage begins long before the ending. You believe you are choosing people freely, while invisible patterns choose them for you. If loyalty feels rare today, ask yourself who trained you to expect less than you deserve. Modern emotional culture is built on speed, stimulation, and constant distraction. Your brain is pushed to jump from one feeling to another without processing anything deeply. When you consume emotions in quick bursts, you lose the ability to build stable bonds. Your nervous system becomes addicted to intensity rather than consistency. This addiction makes unstable people appear exciting, while stable people feel boring. This shift is not natural. It is shaped by repeated exposure to emotionally chaotic environments. Your mind learns to crave the same instability that later breaks you. Machiavelli once said, if you want control, take away predictability. This applies directly to emotional loyalty today. Predictability is replaced with inconsistency, so your mind cannot settle into trust. You stay alert, anxious, and constantly checking for signs of danger. When your attention stays occupied with emotional uncertainty, you lose inner clarity. You mistake confusion for passion and instability for emotional depth. You start believing intense reactions mean someone cares more. In reality, intensity can be a distraction from the absence of genuine loyalty. Emotionally draining people understand this psychological weakness, even if they never study it. They supply emotional highs at strategic moments, not because they care, but because it keeps you hooked. When they sense you pulling away, they suddenly show warmth to reset your doubts. When you get comfortable, they withdraw again to regain control. This push and pull conditions your brain to work harder for small emotional rewards. You invest more effort, thinking the connection is meaningful because it requires sacrifice. But the sacrifice itself becomes the trap that binds you to them. Notice how easily you blame yourself during emotional instability. You question your reactions, your expectations, and even your worth. You convince yourself that asking for consistency is too demanding. You downplay your needs while magnifying theirs. This creates a power imbalance where your emotional safety no longer matters. You start carrying the entire weight of the connection alone. The other person contributes only when they feel loss of control. Bandura once said, if behavior continues, it is being rewarded. Emotionally draining people are rewarded when you stay silent. Your silence tells them their inconsistency is acceptable. Your tolerance communicates that you fear losing them. This fear becomes the currency they use to maintain dominance. They never say it openly, but their actions send one message: control is easier when you doubt yourself. The environment around you also plays a silent role in normalizing emotional loyalty loss. You constantly see shallow interactions presented as deep bonds. You see people praised for leaving quickly rather than understanding patiently. You see emotional vulnerability mocked as weakness instead of essential human need. When such patterns repeat, your brain adjusts to survive. You learn not to expect depth, not to expect stability, and not to expect loyalty. You start believing emotional detachment is smart, even when it slowly damages your mental health. Heartbreak feels normal today because emotional numbness is encouraged more than emotional awareness. You are told to keep moving, keep distracting, keep performing. You are not encouraged to pause and understand how deeply you were affected. Your wounds pile up because you never heal them, you only hide them. The more wounds you accumulate, the easier it becomes for new ones to form. This is why heartbreak becomes familiar, like repeating an old pattern without realizing. Emotionally draining people detect unhealed wounds with alarming accuracy. They sense when your self-worth is fragile and when your boundaries are undefined. They see your silence as permission and your forgiveness as weakness. They know you crave emotional stability, yet they give it only in controlled doses. They feed you hope and fear in the same moment, keeping you emotionally dependent. Your mind confuses dependency with connection, and that confusion is the core of manipulation. Another hidden reason heartbreak feels normal is the rise of emotional imitation. Many people copy the appearance of loyalty without embodying it. They share affectionate words, but fail to show consistent supportive behavior. They mimic emotional closeness, but avoid emotional responsibility. This creates a false sense of safety that collapses suddenly, leaving you confused. You feel betrayed not because they changed, but because you assumed they meant what they expressed. Their emotional performance hides their true intention, which is often validation, not loyalty. Your brain struggles in environments where behavior contradicts words. When someone says they care but acts without consideration, the mind enters conflict. Your nervous system tries to protect you, but your hope suppresses the warning signs. You choose to believe their words instead of their patterns. And every time you ignore a pattern, you give them more space to drain you. Notice how emotional loyalty is devalued when people fear vulnerability. Fear leads to avoidance, avoidance leads to inconsistency, and inconsistency leads to repeated heartbreak. You are told to stay strong, but strength without vulnerability becomes emotional isolation. You keep everything inside, pretending you are unaffected, while the pain keeps building. This internal pressure makes heartbreak feel like a normal emotional cycle. You experience shock, then collapse, then numbness, then repeat. Each cycle makes you believe pain is part of modern connection. Machiavelli once said, if you want influence, weaken the perception of unity. Dividing emotional stability creates individuals who are easier to sway. When loyalty disappears, people stop forming strong communities and strong partnerships. Isolated individuals are easier to manipulate because they rely heavily on external approval. Emotional loyalty protects against manipulation, so its loss benefits those who want control. Here is the twist you rarely consider. If heartbreak feels normal today, it means emotional instability is being reinforced somewhere around you without your awareness. The real question is waiting quietly. Who shaped the belief that you must accept emotional pain as a regular part of human connection? You think heartbreak happens in moments, but it actually begins in the smallest, unnoticed behaviors. You believe people hurt you suddenly, but the mind is shaped by repeated micro-wounds long before. If emotional loyalty feels rare, ask yourself who benefits from keeping you uncertain. Your brain is not designed to survive constant emotional unpredictability. It needs patterns, consistency, and stable signals to feel safe. When every connection becomes a source of confusion, your mind enters survival mode. In survival mode, you accept things you would never tolerate in a calm state. You stop questioning red flags because your brain prioritizes emotional security over logical clarity. You hold on to unstable people because losing them feels more dangerous than keeping them. This is how emotional loyalty collapses inside you before it collapses in others. Machiavelli once said, if you weaken someone's confidence, you weaken their judgment. Emotionally draining people do this without saying a single direct sentence. They drain your judgment by constantly shifting behavior. One moment they are warm, the next moment they are dismissive. This inconsistency forces your brain to overanalyze everything they do. Overanalysis keeps you mentally occupied and emotionally exhausted. An exhausted mind accepts treatment it would never accept in strength. You start normalizing disrespect because your nervous system is too tired to resist it. Heartbreak feels normal today because emotional sabotage is subtle, not dramatic. Manipulators rarely show open cruelty. They use soft tactics that feel almost invisible. They ignore your messages at the exact moment you need reassurance. They become distant when you express emotional concern. They show irritation when you ask for clarity, making you feel guilty for seeking stability. These small behaviors seem harmless, but they slowly destroy your sense of worth. You begin to feel undeserving of emotional consistency. This self-perception prepares the ground for deeper heartbreak later. Albert Bandura once said, if a person keeps repeating painful cycles, they have been conditioned. Many people today are conditioned to accept emotional inconsistency as the new normal. They confuse unpredictability with excitement and instability with passion. They call emotional chaos a strong connection, even though it drains them. They label toxic patterns as modern communication, even though it breaks their mental balance. Every repeated heartbreak strengthens the belief that loyalty is unrealistic. The more you are hurt, the more you expect pain and the less you expect respect. Your brain adapts to survive emotional wounds, not to understand them. When pain becomes repetitive, the brain numbs itself gradually. You stop reacting deeply because you want to protect yourself. This numbness makes heartbreak feel normal rather than shocking. You no longer see loyalty as necessary, only as a bonus if it appears. You approach connections with quiet hesitation, already expecting instability. This expectation shapes your behavior, your boundaries, and your standards. Emotionally draining people recognize this adaptation instantly. They know you are tired, so they offer minimal effort that feels like generosity to you. They respond after long gaps and you feel grateful. They apologize without changing anything, and you treat it as progress. They give affection only in strategic moments, and you see it as a sign of care. Your lowered standards make their manipulation effortless. They do not need aggression, they only need your emotional exhaustion. Modern emotional environments also reward fast replacement. People switch connections quickly without resolving old wounds. They carry invisible emotional damage into every new bond. This creates fragile attachments that collapse under slightest pressure. Loyalty becomes difficult when people are emotionally overloaded and unhealed. Pain multiplies because no one takes the time to understand its root. Everyone is searching for comfort while carrying chaos inside. Heartbreak feels normal today because people treat connection like competition. Value is measured by attention, not by consistency. Closeness is measured by response time, not mutual care. People chase validation more than genuine understanding. In such an environment, emotional loyalty becomes rare because loyalty requires depth. Depth requires patience, effort, responsibility, and honesty. Modern emotional culture avoids all four. Machiavelli once said, if people fear loss, they obey without force. Emotionally draining people use this principle silently. They make you fear losing them through small threats of distance. They stay half available, so you never feel secure. You begin to work harder to keep their attention. This hard work convinces you that the connection must be special. But the effort itself is the trap, not the proof of love. Notice the final hidden layer. Heartbreak feels normal because emotional loyalty is no longer reinforced by society, relationships, or environments. Pain becomes routine because stability is not rewarded. But a question hides behind this truth. If normalized heartbreak is a learned pattern, then what happens when someone finally breaks the training and refuses to accept emotional instability as destiny? You think heartbreak destroys you in the end, but the real damage starts when you stop trusting your own emotional signals. You believe you are choosing who to connect with, but your choices are shaped by invisible psychological pressure. If emotional loyalty feels outdated, ask yourself who taught you that stability is unrealistic. Your emotional system is built to recognize danger through discomfort. When someone disrespects you, your body sends clear signals. When someone is inconsistent, your mind feels uneasy. When someone drains you, your energy collapses. But modern emotional conditioning trains you to ignore these signals. You convince yourself that discomfort means you are overreacting. You treat emotional uneasiness as personal insecurity instead of a warning. You silence your intuition because you fear losing temporary attention. Machiavelli once said, if you disarm someone's inner judgment, they surrender willingly. This psychological principle applies directly to emotional loyalty today. When you doubt your own emotional perception, you lose your natural protection. Emotionally draining people exploit this doubt with strategic behavior. They deny your feelings subtly, making you question your own emotional reality. They use phrases that suggest you are imagining problems. They shift blame in ways that make you feel guilty for seeking clarity. This slow distortion weakens your inner compass. Once the compass breaks, heartbreak can happen easily because you no longer see danger early. Heartbreak feels normal today because people are trained to endure emotional disconnection. You are told to act strong, stay independent, rely on no one. Strength becomes the mask that hides your need for real emotional presence. You pretend you do not care, while your nervous system slowly collapses. You say you are fine, even when you feel invisible. You keep smiling, even when your mind feels heavy. You suppress your emotional needs to avoid being judged. This suppression becomes a silent form of self-betrayal. The more you betray yourself, the easier it becomes for others to repeat that betrayal. Albert Bandura once said, if the environment rewards emotional numbness, people stop believing in genuine connection. This is exactly what is happening today. Emotional numbness is praised as maturity. Detachment is praised as intelligence. Cold behavior is praised as confidence. Meanwhile, emotional loyalty is dismissed as unrealistic. People fear vulnerability because vulnerability exposes their wounds. So they hide inside emotional walls, hoping someone will still understand them. But walls attract people who benefit from your silence, not people who respect your loyalty. Emotionally draining individuals prefer people who suppress their emotions. They know you will not challenge their behavior. They know you will overthink before setting boundaries. They know you will sacrifice your comfort to keep the peace. They know you will stay even when you feel unseen. Your silence becomes their permission. Your patience becomes their advantage. They do not need dramatic tactics. They only need your self-doubt. Another hidden reason heartbreak feels normal today is the rise of emotional overstimulation. You consume constant emotional content, drama, conflict, comparison, and curated affection. Your brain becomes overloaded with unrealistic expectations and distorted examples. You start thinking inconsistency is normal because you see it everywhere. You believe loyalty is rare because it rarely appears authentically around you. Your emotional thresholds shift, your tolerance rises, your standards shrink. You settle for less because the world teaches you to be grateful for crumbs of affection. Heartbreak becomes familiar not because your heart is fragile, but because your boundaries are weakened by conditioning. You start measuring care by attention rather than consistent behavior. You confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. You tolerate patterns that harm your mental health because you fear being alone. You idealize people who give you temporary comfort but long-term pain. Notice how modern emotional environments reward the illusion of connection. People present confidence but hide insecurity. People present affection but avoid responsibility. People present loyalty but resist commitment. These contradictions create psychological friction inside you. Your mind struggles to understand what is real and what is performance. This confusion makes heartbreak feel predictable, like the ending you already expect. Machiavelli once said, if you divide a person internally, you control them externally. Internal division happens when your heart wants loyalty, but your environment teaches instability. You feel pulled in two directions, longing for emotional depth but conditioned for emotional chaos. This internal conflict weakens your ability to make healthy choices. You accept connections that drain you because you no longer trust your own feelings. And now comes the psychological twist that is rarely discussed. If heartbreak feels normal because emotional loyalty lost value around you, then what happens when someone keeps experiencing heartbreak, but still believes they are the one who is failing, instead of seeing the hidden manipulation around them? You think heartbreak breaks you once, but repeated heartbreak reshapes your entire emotional identity. You believe you simply attract the wrong people, but hidden conditioning attracts you to familiar wounds. If loyalty feels impossible today, ask yourself who benefits from keeping you trapped in emotional repetition. Your mind is designed to recognize patterns, even painful ones. When you experience heartbreak repeatedly, your brain starts treating it as expected outcome. This is not weakness, it is neurological adaptation. Your system tries to protect you by preparing for disappointment before it happens. You enter new connections with lowered expectations and quiet fear. This fear makes you tolerate early red flags because you already assume things collapse eventually. You normalize emotional discomfort because your emotional map is shaped by past wounds. Machiavelli once said, if you control expectations, you control behavior. Emotionally draining people live inside this principle without needing to understand it. They keep your expectations low by offering inconsistency wrapped in soft words. They show care only when they sense you pulling away. They disappear when you start needing stability. They return with just enough affection to reset your doubts. This cycle keeps you emotionally obedient, even when you know the pattern is harmful. Your behavior becomes predictable because your fear of loss becomes predictable. Heartbreak feels normal today because emotional manipulation rarely appears as manipulation. It appears as misunderstanding, confusion, timing issues, personality differences. These innocent explanations hide deeper psychological strategies. Emotionally draining people undermine your emotional stability quietly. They question your reactions to minimize your confidence. They delay commitment to maintain your insecurity. They offer affection when they need validation, not when you need support. They create distance at the exact moment you become emotionally vulnerable. This is not random behavior, this is psychological leverage. Bandura once said, if you want to understand behavior, examine the reinforcement behind it. Emotionally draining people behave the way they do because it works. Their inconsistency keeps you invested. Their silence makes you chase clarity. Their unpredictability increases your emotional dependence. Their coldness makes their rare affection feel more valuable than it actually is. They are reinforced every time you forgive, stay silent, or adapt to their patterns. The cycle continues because your tolerance keeps it alive. Your emotional system becomes conditioned to crave what hurts you. The brain does not differentiate between healthy and unhealthy signals. It follows repetition. Whatever repeats becomes familiar. Whatever is familiar feels safe. So you begin to feel safe in unstable emotional environments. You choose chaos because chaos feels known. You avoid healthy connections because stability feels unfamiliar. This is the hidden psychological trap that turns heartbreak into a cycle rather than an event. Modern emotional norms intensify this conditioning. People romanticize leaving, blocking, and replacing. They celebrate walking away without healing. They use detachment to appear strong and desirable. This culture teaches you to suppress emotions instead of understanding them. Suppressed emotions accumulate and become internal pressure. This pressure makes you reactive, insecure, and sensitive to inconsistency. Emotionally draining individuals sense this pressure and use it against you. Notice how people respond when you show genuine emotional loyalty. Some feel overwhelmed. Some feel suspicious. Some feel unprepared. This happens because loyalty is not common anymore. People are more comfortable with distance than closeness. They fear vulnerability because it makes them accountable. They avoid commitment because it makes them predictable. Predictability feels risky in a world that rewards emotional detachment. Your self-worth weakens when surrounded by such environments. You start believing you must prove your value. You try harder, give more, and shrink your boundaries. You silence your needs because you fear losing the little attention you get. Your emotional loyalty becomes a burden rather than a strength. You give more loyalty than you receive, and this imbalance slowly destroys your sense of worth. Machiavelli once said, if you wish to rule, weaken the unity of people. In emotional terms, unity means strong bonds, stable loyalty, consistent commitment. When these collapse, individuals become easier to manipulate. Emotionally unstable environments weaken everyone's ability to form healthy attachments. People become isolated, doubtful, reactive, and desperate for validation. This state makes them prime targets for emotionally draining personalities. And here lies the deeper psychological twist. If heartbreak feels normal because unhealthy emotional patterns keep repeating inside you, then what happens when your mind becomes so familiar with emotional pain that it can no longer recognize genuine loyalty even when it finally appears? You think you can recognize real loyalty easily, but repeated heartbreak changes the way your mind identifies truth. You believe you will know when someone genuinely cares, but conditioning blinds you to what is healthy. If emotional loyalty feels foreign today, ask yourself how many wounds shaped your definition of connection. Your emotional system forms templates based on repeated experience. If you experience chaos, you expect chaos. If you received inconsistency, you anticipate inconsistency. If you were ignored, you fear speaking up. If you were undervalued, you overcompensate to feel worthy. These templates operate silently beneath your awareness. They guide your choices, your reactions, and your emotional responses. You think you are choosing freely, but your choices follow old pain. Machiavelli once said, if you shape perception, you control reality. Emotionally draining environments shape your perception of what connection should feel like. You start equating anxiety with excitement and tension with chemistry. You assume emotional instability is normal because stability feels unfamiliar. Your brain associates loyalty with danger because past loyalty led to hurt. It associates distance with safety because distance protected you from disappointment. Your mind becomes confused between what is healthy and what is familiar. And familiarity wins every time, even if it hurts you. Heartbreak feels normal today because many people do not understand their own emotional templates. They carry unhealed wounds that attract similar situations. They are drawn to patterns that resemble their past. They repeat cycles unconsciously, believing each new heartbreak is accidental. But the cycle continues because the core conditioning never changes. You cannot heal what you never acknowledge. Albert Bandura once said, if behavior is learned, it can also be unlearned. This is the crucial turning point many people miss. Emotional conditioning can be reversed. Your nervous system can be rewired through awareness and boundary work. Your expectations can shift through clarity and self-respect. Your emotional loyalty can be reclaimed when it is directed inward first. Loyalty to yourself rebuilds the emotional compass that manipulation tried to break. The moment you recognize the pattern loses its power. Emotionally draining individuals sense this shift immediately. When you no longer fear losing them, their tactics collapse. When you stop chasing clarity, their inconsistency becomes obvious. When you prioritize your emotional peace, manipulation becomes ineffective. Your silence becomes strength, not a reaction to their behavior. Your boundaries become non-negotiable, not emotional threats. Modern emotional culture will still push instability, but your mind will not absorb it the same way. You will no longer romanticize chaos. You will not confuse distance with strength. You will not call inconsistency modern communication. You will not settle for emotional crumbs. Your emotional loyalty will become filtered, intentional, and rare. You will give it only to those who match it with equal respect. Machiavelli once said, if a person knows their value, they cannot be ruled. When you understand your emotional worth, the cycle of heartbreak ends. Not because people change, but because you no longer accept patterns that drain you. You stop repeating what once destroyed you. You stop chasing what never valued you. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into unstable environments. Your heart no longer treats pain as familiar territory. And now the hidden truth rises to the surface. Heartbreak only feels normal when emotional instability becomes your emotional language. But languages can be changed, rewritten, relearned. Your mind can build a new pattern where emotional loyalty is not rare but required. The twist is simple yet terrifying. If you finally break the conditioning, will you recognize that the real enemy was never heartbreak itself, but the silent psychological training that convinced you to accept it as a normal part of human connection?